This is going to be my new series on my childhood upbringing. So, this is going to be part one. And today I want to talk about what I experienced growing up with immigrant parents. So, I honestly don't like the word immigrant, but my parents are from Jamaica, so I grew up having a Jamaican background. I grew up with my parents cooking Jamaican food. I grew up with my parents speaking in patois, which Jamaican is literally just broken English, okay? Jamaican is literally just a different style of English. It's still English. You just have like an accent, right? But growing up, my dad had a very strong Jamaican accent. Both my parents had Jamaican accents, but my dad's Jamaican accent was very deep. It still is to this day. So growing up, I always had to translate what my father was saying. And I'm telling you, a lot of the times, he was speaking clear as day. It was nothing too crazy where someone wouldn't be able to understand. So I did grow up, kind of realizing that some people were very, I want to say racist, but some people were very racist towards my family. And that's what I experienced and what I noticed in my childhood. I grew up in a state that is predominantly Caucasian. I grew up in New Hampshire, okay? New Hampshire. Just listen to how that's. What do you envision when you hear New Hampshire, okay? So I grew up in New Hampshire. And I honestly grew up also being the only black girl. My brothers as well. So it's me, and then I have two brothers. I have a younger brother, and then I have an older brother. And my older brother has a different dad, okay? That's going to be needed down the road when we get to the other story times, because it gets crazy in my childhood, okay? So I honestly always felt different. I always felt that my family did kind of stick out. I remember my dad used to love Denny's. And we would go to Denny's a lot, and I remember, always noticing. I'm like, damn, we're the only, black people in here. We're the only, colored people in here. I always just, noticed. I was very self-aware. I was aware of everything as a kid, and I picked up on, everything. And also, my dad was the type of person to kind of make things known. He voiced a lot of things, which I'll also talk about in some of my other stories about, just having hard conversations with my dad. But, yeah. So with this Jamaican background, my parents were also Christian. My dad was very religious, and very strict, and very strict in that religion, okay? And still to this day, my dad is just heavy into Christianity. But so I grew up with that type of background. Some things never really resonated with me when I went to church and when I was also forced to read the Bible, which we'll talk about later on in some other videos. So having immigrant parents was honestly a little bit difficult because my parents didn't have all the money, okay? My father grew up with the mentality of, you have to work hard. You got to go after these things. And mind you, my dad actually came over into the United States. He had a work visa, and then he had a work visa first before he got his citizenship. So he came over, from Jamaica with the mentality, kind of young too. I think my dad was in his early 20s when he came over to the United States. But he didn't grow up with having parents. My father has no formal education. He dropped out of school in 4th grade in Jamaica. He doesn't know how to read, which I'll talk about in another video. And still to this day, he doesn't know how to read. So, I grew up with not really having much outside help. I grew up knowing, what the struggle was. We had to work hard for things. And my dad would remind us, hey, if you're black, it's going to be harder for you. You have to be white in order to be successful. These are the things that I would hear from my father, okay? You have to be white in order to be successful. You have to work hard. If you're black, you're going to be treated different. People are going to be racist towards you and judgmental. All of these things were imprinted upon me because my dad would constantly say these things. And I get it. I've witnessed times where I was alone with my dad and I would witness how he was treated. And I never liked some of the things that I witnessed and experience, So yeah, it was pretty hard growing up with immigrant parents, and we always kind of grew up knowing we weren't wealthy. We always knew that. Because again, my parents came over with the mentality of you have to work hard for things in this life. And my dad was also very, very, very protective. I grew up with my mom never working. My dad was always the only breadwinner, and he would literally not allow my mom to work. My mom had to stay at home and just take care of the home. that was what I witnessed growing up. Until we moved to like Florida when I was 9 years old, which I'll talk about in another story, that's when, you know, things kind of got rough and tough. And then my mom was kind of forced to finally get her first job. This would be her finally getting a job and, you know, experiencing her own money, because again, I always witnessed her having to like handle the finances and everything, again, because my dad never knew how to read or do anything like that, so my mom was kind of always in charge of that, and that's how she would be able to, you know, buy things for the house and get things like that. But again, you know, it was a lot difficult. It was very difficult growing up, and, you know, just witnessing the limitations that we had. So this is going to be part 1 of my series. Comment below, let me know if anyone else has experienced things like this, or let me know if it resonated. But either way, this is part 1. Be sure to like this video, save it, and then comment part 2 if you want to know some more.